Up next is Digital Eternity, Inside the Arctic World Archive, brought to you by Context. Please welcome our speaker to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Trust Conference. Glad to see a packed hall. My name is Yasir. I'm editor-in-chief of Context, which is the digital journalism platform of the Thomson Reuters Foundation. Now, if you're an editor like me, you know how small the pot of money is that you have to play with. And if you're an editor like me, you know that there's more money in the world to talk about journalism than to actually do it. And so when you send a correspondent out into the field, it's an expensive proposition. And when they come back with more than what you had asked for, as in 2 stories instead of 1, as an editor, you do a little jig inside your head. And that's exactly what happened here. We sent our video journalist, Albert Hahn, out to the northernmost urban settlement in the Arctic, an island called Svalbard, to do a story about coal mining. And Albert did come back with a story about coal mining, but he also came back with this story. And this is a story about thousands of years from now when they dig up, us. What are they going to find? One of the things is the Arctic Digital Archive that aims to preserve data from today. We generate so much. So this is a story about data storage, which sounds boring, but I guarantee you will actually find it interesting. So without further ado, we'll run the film, and then afterwards I'll do a little Q&A with Albert and Fintan, who are the producers of the film. Enjoy.
Did you know your photos have an expiration date? You might think putting your memories on the cloud means they'll live forever, but they won't. However, there is a place hidden deep in the Arctic that claims it can store your digital data for thousands of years. Safe from floods, pandemics, even a nuclear war. So what's in here? And is there a secret to making data last forever?
Oh my god, you're so young. Look at you go.
So I found this tape in my family's home. What we're watching here is from I think when I was about 9 years old. It's me doing this piano lesson. Such a key part of my childhood. It's this sort of time capsule from the early 2000s. Do you digitize tapes? I got the tape digitized so I could preserve the memory, maybe pass it down to my kids one day. But it got me thinking, how long will this digital file last for? Like, what's the best way to store data for the long term?
Yeah. So, what is the best way?
Well, I came across this place that pickles it.
What?
I went to Svalbard, this island deep in the Arctic that's not far from the North Pole, to do a story about coal mines. But at the same time, I heard about this place called the Arctic World Archives. It's a decommissioned coal mine. It's a few hundred meters under the mountains. It's underneath permafrost. It's pretty cold. Once you get deep enough, you'll suddenly see this door with shiny letters that says Arctic World Archive. And it's kind of surreal. And it was run by a company called Pickle, this Norwegian company that promises to store data for thousands of years.
Pickle, like...
Yeah, exactly. Pickles.
Hi, Albert. Very nice to have you here. Come in.
So, let's go. They essentially had this technology that turns data into film. And they put this film onto reels. On each frame of the roll of film, they print a super high definition QR code. And there's about 8 million pixels on each of these QR codes.
At the moment, there's no better technology to store data long term than on film.
So for example, they've got the Bible, an award-winning movie, famous works of art embedded in these pixels. The film reels are locked away in a vault, which they say has the ideal conditions to preserve it. It's basically a perfect time capsule for our data.
It's interesting because this sounds like a very old school way of archiving things, just with a digital twist.
Yeah, they actually compare it to the Rosetta Stone, which, if you think about it, it's basically just this piece of rock with writing on it. So their belief is that the physical medium will always last longer than almost everything else.
I've been speaking with a lot of archivists for this story, and I didn't realize just how vulnerable our digital lives are.
There is a perception that if it's digital, if it's on the web, it has this sense of permanence, but actually it's the opposite.
Your digital data can disappear for all sorts of reasons, like cyber attacks.
The data breach involved
In a recent cyber attack has exposed the personal information of more than 2 million
Or the companies
customers.
storing your data might go bust, like think of MySpace. Now, there are people who are trying to back all this up. For example, the Internet Archive, which is attempting to, well, archive the whole internet. The problem is we're putting out so much stuff, so much data online now, that things just get lost.
networks and people and institutions preserve objects. It's not the system that does it, but there's just not enough of the people, or the time, or the resources.
So what does that mean?
Yeah, so your MySpace page, not a big deal if it disappears. But the British Library was hacked last year. They were offline for months, and the library still hasn't recovered access to everything in its digital collection.
A lot of scientists are actually talking about this type of century to have the potential to be the forgotten century in the future.
And maybe the most important that is put in here. McDonald's have put in the recipe for burgers.
So the big question is pickle the answer to all this?
Well, let me tell you how much it cost first. It was about 9,000 euros for 120 gigs worth of data, or one roll of film. So it's a bit pricier than using iCloud.
Yeah, but I was just thinking, aren't you running the same risk with Pickle as you are with the cloud? Like, I haven't seen their business plan, but are they going to last for 2,000 years?
If Pickle does go under, the idea is to set up a foundation with enough money to keep the Arctic World Archive going on. But forever is a long time. Pickle picks Svalbard because it's a kind of special place. It's not owned by any country, it's isolated, it's remote, but who knows what it'll look like in the future? It is the fastest warming place on Earth, and
8 years ago, melting permafrost got into the famous seed vault, which is in the same coal mine as the Arctic World Archives.
Well, if preserving data for thousands of years is so difficult, maybe the bigger question here is, do we really have to preserve things that long?
So I can't see thousands of years into the future, but to an extent I can see 5 years down the line. What we can do is prepare for the next generation, and I can prepare and present and pass on more like a relay race into the future.
when my dad filmed that video, I don't think he was thinking, oh, hopefully one day in 30 years, my son or somebody's going to watch it. It was just more of like, I want to preserve this moment. But I figured, since I was down there, I might as well find a budget solution. When, you are sort of living your everyday life, you're in a big city, life just goes by so quickly, right? But in a place like Svalbard, in an old coal mine, everything just stands still. And it just felt like a really fitting place to leave a tiny part of my memory there.
Well, this is very well. I say they can start, but so
Please welcome our speakers to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, the talent.
Hi, everyone.
So you all know who they are from the screen behind me, so I'll jump right into the questions since they haven't given us that much time. First thing, Albert, what I want to ask you is, I sent you there to do a story about coal mines and coal mining. How did you find this one?
Yeah, it's it's funny because Svalbard is this really special place. It's the place of extremes. You have a place that's the fastest growing place on Earth, but it has a coal mine. It's in the middle of nowhere, but the supermarkets are well stocked. And finally, it's a very inhospitable place, hard to get around and do filming, but it's actually really easy to talk to people and find stories. And when I went down to the coal mine that was still running, I had heard about all these other coal mines that had been decommissioned decades ago. And one of them, coal mine number 3, has been turned into a sort of museum, and also where they store the global seed vault, which is the doomsday vault. But not many people also know that that's also where they store data. So in case something ever were to happen in the world, some of the world's most important data.
So you were just out for a drink and somebody told you this?
I was just out for a drink at the only bar in town, I think. There might be 2, actually, but I was probably at one of them. And I met, one of the tour guides there at the coal mine, and she said, you should come down for a visit. And I did, and that's how the story began.
Note to young journalists in the crowd, always ask questions while you're having a drink and then follow through. Who's using the vault? There's so much information in the world, and so many people are interested in preserving their data because it's the most important thing. Who is using this, at least for now?
Yeah, so I think there's about just over 100 objects in the vault, which isn't really that much, but when you look at the institutions which are putting their data in the vault, there's like about 60 of them. They've got the Vatican Library, Brazil's Football Museum, which is obviously very important, and they've got software from GitHub, they've got software from Microsoft, so quite a lot of big institutions are investing in this.
Right, and who decides what is important enough to save? Because we generate quintillion gigabytes, terabytes of data every day. Who decides? And obviously it takes up space because you're putting it on film, which I'll come to in a second. Who decides?
I guess those institutions and companies that, pay for the service. I guess the Arctic World Archive operates as a service. They charge 9,000 euros for 120 gigabytes, which is quite a hefty price tag. So not exactly the same as iCloud, as we mentioned in the video.
Yeah.
But I guess it's up to those institutions to make those decisions. And I guess
let's say I'm a global south country that has priceless objects like in my possession. 9,000 is a pretty hefty sum to. So basically, those who can afford it would be able to save the data. And film seems like a very low-tech way of preserving high-tech stuff. Did you ask about that? And what did you find out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing that struck me when researching this was how often the physical medium is the most sort of secure when we talk about long time, like over a long time. Like I think there's other people who are looking into writing data on clay tablets, which is basically, what they were doing 3000 BC, but they're still looking into it today to last for a long
time. So the film will endure a lot longer than a hard drive.
Yeah, like hard drives, I think, only last up to about 10 years if you're lucky. So if you have a hard drive at home with a lot of photos, please check on it because digital data is much more fragile than we think.
My wedding video's on a hard drive. Now I need to go and
Sorry, we should have talked before this. Yeah.
How do you retrieve it?
From the
thousands of years from now, there's a lot of assumptions, right? People are going to have the technology to read these QR codes. People are going to still speak English. All of these assumptions. How do you retrieve this stuff?
Yeah, so the Arctic World Archives, they make a lot of assumptions. At the start of the film, they print like instructions in English on how to read the rest of the film, which obviously assumes people will be speaking English 2,000 years from now are able to understand it. They also have like visual representations. They have instructions on how to retrieve the data from the film. And then on the film itself, the data is encoded in these like, super high definition QR codes, basically, which can contain, I think, 2 megabytes per frame, which isn't a lot, but when you're talking about, software or
2 megabytes?
text,
That's like a floppy disk.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Wow. Last question for you, Albert. You left a USB drive with your piano video in there. How do we find it? Where is it?
It's under one of those rocks.
No, but like, if you were to leave a treasure map,
Yeah.
like what is there? Do I take 10 steps and then turn right? How do I do this?
I didn't leave it thinking that I would actually ever find a way to retrieve it, or anybody would, unfortunately. I mean, I do think the interesting thing with technology is that as it gets more advanced, in some ways it gets more ephemeral and, more fragile, but our need to remember and be remembered stays the same throughout. So I just find it really interesting that, even in this day and age with so much advanced technology goes on, there are companies like Pickle that, use the old school ways to kind of achieve what people have been trying to achieve since the beginning of time, which is to preserve things.
All right. Thank you, guys. And ladies and gentlemen, Albert Hahn and Fintan McDonnell.
That's perfect.